Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back on Poll As You Go here on Potomac Watch with Kate Odell and Alicia Finley. Just to clarify the point about reimbursement by the federal government, that 65 cents you talked about, that's the amount the federal government would give to a state, 65 cents on the dollar that spent on Medicaid under the old program. But under Obamacare, the expansion is 90 cents on the dollar. So there's a real incentive for the states to milk that 90 cents payment because then they can get more money from the feds. Let's listen to Speaker Johnson, Mike Johnson, talk about this, as Kate suggested, on CNN.
There's about $50 billion estimated that are lost every year in Medicaid just in fraud alone. No one's for that. We've got to make sure we eliminate it. We have the algorithms now to do that. We have advanced technology to find it. We need to provide identification for people who are Medicaid recipients to make sure they are not illegal aliens. That's another big carve-out that we will make to save a lot of money. There are a lot of places to find efficiencies in these programs and ensure they're going to the people they're intended to help. If we don't do that, these programs aren't going to remain solvent, and so that's a big part of the equation here.
Alicia, you've been tracking the relative payments to states from the federal government, and they're really not all the same in terms of per capita payments. New York and California receive a lot more in federal Medicaid dollars per capita than do, say, Texas and Florida. And why is that?
Right, meaning per capita, that's not per beneficiary, that's per resident, though they also receive more per capita because they just spend more and they're less efficient in their care. One reason is because a lot of these Democratic states, and some Republican states as well, but to a lesser extent, impose these taxes on hospitals and managed care organizations, insurance plans that they use then to draw down more federal funds. I mean, we were just talking about how the government gives $9 to states for every $1 they spend on the Obamacare population expansion, and those are able-bodied, healthy people, and for the others, it's usually between $1 to $3. So basically, when you tax hospitals, and then for every dollar in that tax, you may get 3 to 9 from the federal government that you then pour back into Medicaid. And so this has just become an open-ended buffet for a lot of these states.
A very important point. We're getting into the weeds here in policy, and I know for some folks it's hard to follow if you don't follow this like we do for a living. But this is crucial stuff because the magnitudes of spending on Medicaid is enormous. It's increased 51%, Alicia, just since 2019. And
right,
as
and
share of the federal budget, it's up from 7% to 10%.
It's been the fastest growing share of the budget. I mean, we talk about entitlements and how that's crowding out other programs. Well, it's actually Medicaid primarily, despite our aging population, which you'd think Social Security and Medicare, and they are growing, but they actually aren't growing as fast as Medicaid is. And this is one reason a lot of people expected, everyone actually expected in terms of the analysts, that the growth would slow down because after the pandemic emergency, which ballooned the rolls, and that was because the Congress actually barred states from removing people who became ineligible for Medicaid from their rolls. So the enrollment increased by about 20 or so million during the pandemic. And while enrollment has actually come down some, spending hasn't. It's continued to increase and increase faster than inflation. And one of the reasons is because there's no incentives for states to actually be efficient in their care. And another reason is because states are now tapping Medicaid to pay for other kinds of social spending, like homeless housing, basically food or what they call nutrition support. So it's just become another pot of money for states.
Well, some for sports club membership.
Oh, yeah, music lessons in California for at-risk youth.
But that's not in the statute. How can they do this? They do this because they got a waiver to do this. The states did from HHS under Biden.
Right. There's a program, or it's called a demonstration program, and states can apply for flexibility. And generally, the editorial pages have been supportive of these demonstration projects. For instance, I think Rhode Island in the past has used them, applied for a block grant.
Right.
And there's actually been a lot of good innovations that have come out of this. But what the Biden HHS did is basically say, well, anything you propose, as long as you say that it will help improve health outcomes, we will approve it. And note that also that these waivers are supposed to be budget neutral, meaning that they won't increase federal spending. There has been no accountability to ensure that that's actually the case. They've just basically rubber stamped these.
And a couple of the things that the states have used through these waivers to spend Medicaid money on include housing for homeless, as well as nutrition programs. And then you have to say, well, wait a minute, we already have food stamps as a nutrition program. You also have low-income housing subsidies. That's another program. So why do we need Medicaid to spend on that?
Well, that's exactly it. States just want more money. They want another source of money that they don't have to pay for. So essentially, going back to the hospital tax, this is just a way to tap the federal government to pay for more of their own social spending.
I mean, it's really interesting to me, Kate. Your point, I think, is so important about the lack of knowledge among Republicans here, because so many of them have just come in since Trump. They don't have the knowledge base about health care in particular or tax policy. You know, we were used to having members of the Ways and Means Committee that writes the tax bill, for example, and also works with health care. They'd come in, they knew the tax code. They knew tax policy. They knew the relative merits of each thing. They would come in and say, oh, Paul, we have to do this. Well, we don't agree with it, but we have to do this to get X members. So give us a break on the tactical politics of it. But they understood the program at least. They knew what was pro-growth tax reform. They knew what was really something just a parochial interest. Now, these guys come in and it's like, oh, really? That's how it works? And on healthcare, it's even worse. So this is an education process that has to go ahead. And before 2017, for example, when Paul Ryan was Speaker at the time, but he had been Budget Chairman and then Ways and Means Chairman, he used to go around with a slideshow and educate members, one-on-one or one-on-five to say, all right, here's how this works, here's what we're doing, and here's why. This Republican Congress just got a real tough education road ahead if they don't want to get routed politically when they have this debate.
Yeah, I mean, some of that education is ongoing now and trying to get some of that muscle memory back in both the tax and healthcare space. I think it's harder on healthcare because the failure to repeal the Affordable Care Act just left such a wound in the party. And there's been so much brain drain on that subject, from Tom Coburn to Pat Toomey to the people who are making the arguments on healthcare. However, Donald Trump is less beholden than ever to what's written about him. He should be willing to fight back against budget scoring that says this or that terrible thing will happen and get his message out. So look, there's arguments that he can make, that Republicans can make. For instance, Medicaid is not very good health insurance. We haven't even touched that here, but if you have Medicaid and you can't get access to an excellent cancer center when you get cancer, that is a problem. We should want people to have health insurance that's not just an insurance card, but that gets them actually access to good doctors when they need them. And Medicaid is not good at that. So this is a whole nother set of arguments that Republicans should be making. And I know perhaps I'm reaching here because Trump has tried to take entitlements almost entirely off the table on touching them. But we have gone through here some really sensible reforms that Republicans should be able to get behind. That is not taking insurance away from people, but trying to make it better, trying to get people into better types of insurance, trying to make sure there's not money blatantly going out the door for fraud or ineligible people. This is a debate that Republicans may be poised to win if they want to have it.
Yeah, and don't just have the debate on fiscal terms, at dollar and cents, because the Democrats are going to be making a moral argument. You're hurting poor people. Republicans can make an argument on similar moral terms, and I think more than hold their own, if they're willing to learn, study, and actually know something about the program. All right, Alicia and Kate, thank you. We're going to leave it at that. This is going to be a debate that's going on for some time. We're here every day on Potomac Watch, the opinion page of the Wall Street Journal Daily Podcast. Thank you all for listening.